So, man, let's get into the Super Bowl conversation. No need to play around. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers shocked the world. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9. And my first question for you is: was it Brady or was it Bowles?
I mean, I think we all know that. I mean, Brady played mistake free. I think he was 3 touchdowns, 0 picks, which was important. But Todd Bowles in that cover too. Andy Reid refused to run the ball, going back to his Philly days. And that front four for Tampa Bay got home. Those linebackers are all fast as hell. Devin White, I've never seen a linebacker run faster since like Patrick Willis. Levante David finally gets some credit he deserved. That whole defense. But you're right. I think it makes us bring the magnascope back to the magnifying glass back to Todd Bowles, and maybe he was yanked too fast for the New York Jets and never get another chance. This guy's a good coach. Obviously, he can call some defensive plays too.
I'm happy that Bowles put on the show that he did. And I'm also happy to hear that Leftwich and the media has actually been getting credit for the game plan. Whether it was his game plan, Arians' game plan, or Tom Brady's game plan, it's good to hear the coordinators getting their due for what they've actually been doing. Because throughout the season, man, I thought Tom Brady was getting far too much credit from the national media who did not actually pay attention to Tampa Bay last year. As a Falcons fan, I watched the NFC South. I knew they were a 7-9 team who had a quarterback who had 35 turnovers. So you take that record that they had, that 7-9, and then you just ask the quarterback to be competent, and you have a playoff team. And now, don't get me wrong, I think what Brady brought, bringing some of that Patriot way there, the accountability, the ability to challenge the coaching staff in a way that says, hey, this works. I know this works because I've done it before. I think that's what put them over from being a good playoff team to our Super Bowl champions. But I just think what Brady was doing on the field itself was like totally overblown. But I'm also a quote unquote Brady hater. So that may be my bias against him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to sometimes. I would say, I mean, obviously Brady's certainly more professional than Jameis Winston. But Bruce Arians, to his credit, he's obviously a good coach. He's obviously a good leader of quarterbacks, as he's shown in the past, whether it's Andrew Luck or Ben Roethlisberger. But he pushed away the credit. He deflected a lot of the credit, whether he was saying that Tom Brady coaches the team sometimes. He was giving a lot of credit to Leftwich and Bowles. So that's kind of like, it started from the top. Like, he definitely gave everyone their due, at least in his own coaching staff, whether the media wanted to or not. Arians definitely was good on that. But it almost felt like one of those situations like when Tyronn Lue was coaching LeBron James, where Leftwich, everyone's like, what is he really doing? It's definitely all Tom, when really, obviously, Leftwich has been a QB in the league. He's been a leader of men, and obviously he knows how to run an offense. So I think it was one of those things where Tom Brady, the shadow he cast was so large that you almost forget about Leftwich for a while, and you kind of belittle what he actually did. But I mean, in that game, it was impressive. I mean, you kind of had a feeling that Gronk was gonna be Gronk in that game. I mean, after going on boat parties all last year and kind of taking the year off, he started the year a little slow, and by the end, obviously, he made his mark. There were so many pieces of that game plan that deserve so much credit.
You talk about Gronk, and I think that Brady threw those touchdowns to both Gronk and AB just to say, hey, New England, we had these guys here. We could have kept these guys. You could have kept me.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, not that Bill is stupid, but he definitely looks like he made the wrong decision with that one. I mean, to his credit, Tom Brady didn't look as good in New England the last couple of years. Like, he definitely looked like he fell off a little bit. But obviously now we know if you give him a real receiving core, that wouldn't happen.
Exactly, man. I got some videos that I might just take off of YouTube because I was talking about the Brady and Gronk Buccaneers being a G-Wagon with the gas light on. And yeah, it's a nice vehicle, but it's just not enough gas left in the tank. And it might
You can't rev it up. You can't rev it up. You're scared.
And guess what? They made it. But the thing you said about Ty Lue, I think that was a great one because it's really Ty Lue doesn't get enough credit for what he did. As far as somebody who knew how to manage talent, manage egos, and be selfless enough to not get credit for what he's doing as a coach. Because if you see what Ty Lue's doing with the Clippers now, Kawhi's playing back-to-backs. They're playing a better brand of basketball. And not to say that Ty Lue can go do what Nick Nurse is doing in Toronto with that type of talent, but I don't think that Nick Nurse can do what Ty Lue has done with the talent that he has either. You know, every coach doesn't have to be the great X's and O's guy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. To be a great coach, sometimes you got to know, hey, I have these good players, and instead of, you know, trying to win my way, I'm going to win what's best for the team. And I think that's Andy Reid's problem. Andy Reid, like so many NFL coaches, has such a large ego. It's like, hey, we're going to win my way. So Tampa Bay saying, hey, Andy, run the ball. Hey, Andy, maybe you might want to max protect or leave a back end to chip, leave a back end to block. Bring your second tight end to come in and block it. And he goes, no, we're going to go 5 against your 4, and we're going to beat you. But guess what? It didn't work. For the first time, Patrick Mahomes has looked human in the NFL. I don't recall seeing one rhythm pass the entire game.
No, there was one play, I believe it was maybe in the first quarter or maybe the early second before the game got away, where they used the receiver screen to block the end, and Mahomes went around for like an 8-yard run. And it was the only time all game that they really even you saw people chip on the defensive ends, like Pierre-Paul, the game of his life. 8-0 in the postseason, by the way, is Jason Pierre-Paul. Has never lost a postseason game, which is wild to me. I just want to touch on real quick with the last thing on the offensive coordinator thing. I think the NFL and its owners have this stereotype they're trying to fulfill constantly. They think that if you're 38 and white with a neck beard, that you're an offensive genius, and that no other person that doesn't fit that description can be that. When I feel like everyone's stuck trying to find the next Sean McVay, and obviously that reflected in all these coaching hires, whether it's Kingsbury last year or 2 years ago with the Cardinals, or what is it, Zach Taylor with the Bengals, or this year with the coach the Eagles hired, the guy from Indy. And I think it's like, come on, like you got an OC in the Buccaneers, like former QB. It doesn't have to fit your stereotype to be a good offensive play caller. And then there's a couple of notes that I had here. I heard earlier in the week, I don't know if you noticed this, Travis Kelce is so good at getting first downs. And one of the notes was that he's so ready to turn around after he catches the ball. He'll catch it, and he's already ready to turn upfield. But because of that, he has a couple drops here and there. Definitely had a key drop on third down. Maybe it was the second quarter. And then Mike Remmers, that poor bastard. He got destroyed by Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware against in that Denver Super Bowl with Carolina, and then today he just had his lunch handed to him. I don't think he should be anything more than an emergency tackle at this point, at least in big moments.
Should he even be an emergency tackle?
It was turnstile-ish. That's the only way I can describe it.
And I'm not somebody who watches line play intently because, for one, it's boring. And as a personality, I am not ever going to be the guy who's going to tell you what's going on in the trenches. I will defer to those who do that, right? But when you're watching the game it's like Pat cannot go 3 steps plant. He cannot go 5 steps plant. What was it? He ran 497 yards escaping the rush.
He got his cardio in for sure. On turf toe. Great game plan, huh?
Yeah, I just, it's just unfortunate that Andy Reid didn't adjust, but it goes back to who Andy Reid is and has always been. He got away with it last year because, he don't get me wrong, great coach, had a great team. But
great guy, obviously.
and you're a Philly fan, so you felt this. This is actually hurt you. Andy Reid is an awful game manager. What the hell are you doing with your timeouts at the end of the second quarter, Andy?
Yeah.
I get that you're trying to, say our defense is going to make a stop, but they didn't. And I'm not saying that the officiating was perfect, because it's not. But then you end up giving up a touchdown where the Bucs were going to run the clock out.
Yeah, I think to me, and obviously it's easy to say this from your computer chair, but I think that the media is going to rip apart taking those timeouts. But I mean, that's who they've been all year, is it not? Like, they've been very aggressive. They're going to call timeouts. So I can't hate him as much for that decision, because it's just having confidence in Mahomes to then get the ball with 48 seconds left and drive down the field and be who he should have been, I guess. So I can't hate him as much for that. But I think that there's this thing about making the halftime adjustment where we're like, coaches, how to make halftime adjustments. But if you wait till halftime to make your adjustment, you're done. It's about the timeout adjustments. It's about like those timeout in the first quarter adjustments. It's about the between the first and the second quarter changes you make to the game plan. And there was none of that. The Chiefs had the same game plan the whole game. They couldn't solve the cover two. And how much better? You got to feel good for Carlton Davis. Got burnt for like 250, 60 yards in one quarter last time they played, and he played lockdown. Did you see him the whole game? That's the best thing you can say to a corner, because I didn't see you the whole game. They took Hill out of the game. And can I just say, can we stop giving QBs the Super Bowl MVP? Tom Brady wasn't the MVP of this game. And obviously we can go back through history. Eli Manning was not the MVP of that Super Bowl. There's just so many other instances where it's like, give it to the D lineman, give it to this guy who played out of his mind. Like, I know that you can't give it to units, but like, give it to the D line, give it to all three of those linebackers. That pisses me off.
And the problem is like how I just said. I'm not checking for trench play. I see the obvious stuff, right?
Right.
But who in the media that gets these votes knows line play that well? Like, I listen to Ryan Russillo every week, and he constantly talks about, I know a little bit, but I don't know what to look for. Like, I don't know if someone's supposed to kick out or block down, and you see stuff like that. And it was easy. It was convenient to say, oh, let's give it to Tom. It's his fifth. He's the reason that they're here. And it's like, he did what he was supposed to do.
He played good. Yeah.
And he took shots when he was supposed to, safe shots like he always does. But I'd say 60% of the quarterbacks in the NFL would have won that game with the way that Kansas City failed to adjust to Tampa Bay's defense. Am I crazy for saying that?
I mean, another thing that kind of gets brought up there is that, like, that whole, remember that a couple years ago where they're like, that big middle linebacker who clogs the run is done. You need to be able to cover in space as a linebacker now. I think that Tampa Bay benefited from that, like, otherworldly. All their linebackers are fast and smart in coverage, so I think that the linebacker renaissance that's been kind of slowly happening is here. Absolutely. There wasn't a big, slow 6'5" guy run stuffer on the field, I don't think. It was just – also, is Le'Veon Bell cooked? Was he on the field? Is he hurt? Did Andy Reid forget him on the bus? I haven't looked into that, but, like, nothing's come out. I thought he was going to be a game changer for them once he got up to speed. And, I mean – obviously, that the rookie Edwards-Helaire had been dealing with an injury since like halfway through the season, but like Bell,
Clyde looked good. They averaged like 7 yards to carry on the ground. Like, hey, this is working. And we were afraid that Bruce Arians wasn't going to do that. Be like, hey, let's be balanced, pound, play action, and Bruce did it. So a major credit to them, but. One thing about the game that really, really stuck with me is I want to know what Tom Brady said to Tyrann Mathieu on the field.
I mean, what? He called him a bitch. He said something about his mom. I don't know. Like, Tom Brady's never been one to be quiet about shit talking. Absolutely. Like, he'll talk trash.
But why does Brady get the benefit of the doubt? For one, Honey Badger gets the penalty called on him, and if you watch it,
that was awful.
you go, come on, man. It's you either throw nothing or you throw two and you offset them because both of them are going back and forth at each other. But even in the coverage of it, and how you just said Brady's been wanting to talk shit, but we never talk about Brady being a shit talker. We talk about Phillip Rivers being a shit talker. We talk about Jameis eating the dogs, you know. We talk about the other quarterbacks that may not necessarily fit the pretty boy corporate mold that Tom does, but Tom gets a pass because, oh, well, Psycho Tom, because he's winning. It's passion. Like, no, bro. Tom talks shit just like everybody else talks shit. Tom just goes in front of the podium and says, well, you know, we played hard today and, you know, on to next week. Great at the podium, and because he's great at the podium, and because, again, he fits a certain mold, he gets the benefit of the doubt when it's like, you can't be that damn good at that age and not have a crazy, intense edge about you.
That's the word. That's the word is edge. I also think there's another Tom Brady comparison. He walked off the field multiple times this year when he lost without giving a handshake to the opposing quarterback. And then we blame Cam Newton for that post game of the Super Bowl when he's being a bad sport. But Tom Brady's just passionate. You're right. He fits a mold and he gets away with that stuff because of it. But I mean, what do you say to Richard Sherman? I'm going to kick your ass, and then after the game, Sherman looks like the villain, and obviously Sherman. There's a little bit more to Sherman than just that moment, obviously. But yeah. I mean, he's got caught in his tracks before, not often, but once or twice.
I think the B word was used personally.
Yeah, he was mic'd up, wasn't he? We'll get to hear it eventually, right?
No, they'll burn the tapes. just like, you know, the Bulls in 94, 95, you know, we'll burn the tapes.
Yeah. Just like that Kings Lakers series from 03. It's never going to be seen again.
Never. But, you know, congrats to Tom. Congrats to Tampa Bay. Do you think that Tom is the GOAT of GOATs?
Yeah. I mean, I was saying this to you before the pod started. You can't compare him to football players anymore. It just doesn't really does not compute, honestly. Like, you can't compare him to Montana anymore because he did it with a different team. Obviously, Montana took the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game, but he didn't get them over the hump, which is a whole different ordeal. This is the equivalent of Michael Jordan going to the Wizards and winning an NBA championship there, just in terms of the equivalent of what Tampa Bay is as a franchise to the NFL and what the Wizards are to the NBA. It's very similar in like just how bad they've been, just organizationally, and just all the pieces are. Now, Tampa Bay's defense was kind of good when he came in, and he definitely just jumped in the pilot seat and just kind of hit the buttons better than Jameis Winston did. But I mean, in terms of just what those creamsicle jerseys used to mean, they used to mean 0-14, and now it's like, I mean, Super Bowl champs. So I mean, he definitely gets credit for that. It's definitely is an amazing feat. In terms of the GOATs, I mean, yeah. I mean, you probably have to go to non-team sport people. I mean, it's Jordan, Brady, and then like, I don't know. Do you got anybody else for me?
You probably have to go Serena, Tiger, maybe Federer.
Right. Tiger, yeah.
A boxer.
Right. Ali. Can we go there?
And so that's kind of where the conversation I was having earlier was about this. And it was coming from the post I saw. It kind of came from it seemed like a non-sports source, right? So they're saying, how can you even say Tom Brady's the GOAT of GOATs when look at what Tiger Woods has done? Look at what Serena has done. And it's like
team sport. It's a different element. You gotta lead 10 men with you everywhere you go.
Exactly. And there's so many other variables that you can't control, but Tom has shown where he goes, winning follows. And I can't be a hater forever. I just can't hate on Brady forever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate his passion. I don't hate him. I can definitely dislike some of his habits or some of the things that have happened, but I mean, that's just being a fan, you know. Has there ever been my question also is, are they the most unlikable Super Bowl roster in the last 10 to 20 years? Between Brady, who, for all his greatness, definitely gets a fair share of hate just because of how good he is and how much of, I mean, just kind of how pretentious he can be sometimes with his Uggs and kissing his son and whatnot. You got Ndamukong Suh kicking people's heads. He won a Super Bowl. You got Antonio Brown and some, I don't even want to go through his rap sheet at this point. Is this the most unlikable Super Bowl winner you can think of?
Super Bowl winner, yes. I still don't think they're as unlikable as the 2012 Heat.
Right. I mean, and that was less off the field or off the court than more just kind of the air of superiority they kind of tried to hold themselves to before they've done anything. So yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
But yeah, I was rooting against them all year, and I don't hate AB, and I think AB's done a lot of terrible things. But I'm not in that kill AB camp because what I've seen is he needs football.
That's an interesting way to look at it. And obviously there's a lot of good dudes on that team too. We can't just
Yeah. You got your Mike Evans who's already talking about taking a pay cut.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin, who gave Tom Brady his number and didn't charge him, that would have been at least $100,000. At least. I might want $250,000.
Levante David, consummate professional.
Yeah. So I'm just happy. I'm happy that it's over. But let's transition a little bit into, you talked about Bruce Arians and his coordinators and how he gave his coordinators a lot of, they're just due for what they did. And if you don't know, they have one of the more diverse coordinator rooms in the NFL, very diverse staff, but more importantly, at the top 3 positions, he has 3 African-American coaches. And then he also has 2 female coaches on his staff. Do you think that because the NFL is a copycat league, like you talk about the Sean McVays, the neckbeards, that personality that has yet to win a Super Bowl, by the way, they get there, but they come up short. Do you think the NFL will see this diversity on their Super Bowl champion and say, hey, look, there are qualified people who don't fit the mold that we typically look for these positions?
You would hope so. And that's a great point that none of these 38-year-old boy geniuses have done anything. I mean, Sean McVay's come close, but even he's the prototype. I mean, I think that there's, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, I think that when black coaches come in, they're almost expected to be motivators as opposed to X's and O's guys. Yeah. And I feel like that's definitely like a stereotype that I don't understand. And I feel like Todd Bowles gets the Jim Caldwell Award of the coach with the lowest pulse. He doesn't look like he's ever sweating. He doesn't look like he's ever under pressure. That guy is not a motivator, at least not that I see on the outside, obviously. And I feel like that may hurt him because he doesn't fill that black coaching stereotype. But, like, dude knows X's and O's. Absolutely. Is he the best Jets head coach other than maybe Rex Ryan for 2 years? And we've seen, at least in a lifetime, like he did an all right job with what is usually a terrible team. He almost got Ryan Fitzpatrick to the playoffs, right?
Yeah. And they were in a rebuild, and they say, hey, and they're like, hey, we're gonna fire you because you're not winning. It's almost like, and this is gonna be unpopular. I look at Hugh Jackson.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, Hugh was terrible in Cleveland by his record, but they were in the middle of a rebuild. They were selling off picks to get more assets, and it's like the front office didn't want to win, so he didn't win, and then he's a bad coach. He goes, no, I don't.
It's hard to
coach.
Yeah, well, his thing is hard too because remember in that Hard Knocks episode, his mom died in training camp. Like that dude was going through some stuff. Also, like he probably should have taken a break in that moment anyway. I know a lot of times you're trying to work through it and use work to ease your mind, but that was weird to see too. I also think it's hard when you're put in and you're told, lose games, or at least you're put in a position to lose games and not let just a terrible culture consume that football team, which is why someone like, ironically, Brian Flores is so impressive. He was put in there and they were like, lose games. And he was like, no. Like they got killed that first game. Everyone wanted out of the Dolphins. They traded Minkah Fitzpatrick. And by the end of the year, they have like 5 or 6 wins. And obviously it carried over to this year. So I think you're right. I mean, Jeff Fisher is the ultimate example, always, obviously. I mean, Adam Gase, there's just a lot of people that, you know, if they didn't look the way they look, they wouldn't have the chances they have. And you hope, but I say this kind of as a joke and kind of seriously, that like, but don't be surprised if the biggest takeaway from the Super Bowl coordinator wise is that Eric Bieniemy shouldn't be a head coach. And like, I say that as a joke, but also it's sad, but it might be true.
You know, Dan Campbell wasn't employed, I'd play along. But yeah, man, I don't think anything's going to change personally, because you can't change the owners, and they're old billionaires, and you don't tell old billionaires what to do. And unfortunately, what we see in sports is that the owner of the team, the top, is not always invested in what the team is actually there to do. Because for one, if you look at what most of these guys own, they are experts in that field. Sports doesn't work that way. It's hard to become an expert in sports and then make enough money to own a team. Maybe Arthur Smith gets to become that guy if he inherits the FedEx from his dad, you know, current coach of the Falcons. You got your Jerry Jones, who is a decent football mind, or at one point was a decent football mind. You know,
he did good in the beginning, right? He had a fast start, and then has been terrible since, I think.
Right, but you don't have your Al Davis as somebody who was actually a no-shit GM and was able to purchase a team now, because the teams cost so much that only the rich of the rich can buy them, and they're not sports people. So it's a weird business structure if you think about it. Like, hey, you're going to own this thing that you don't really know anything about, but all you're going to care about is your bottom line, which is what you care about in all your other businesses. But that's not actually always what's best for your success as a owner of a franchise.
Well, that's why, and not to cross sports, but like, that's why we love people like Mark Cuban. Like, not only has he invested time and like energy and resources in like learning how to be a sports guy, but like, I think part of it is also like caring about your entire organization, like actually caring about these people, caring about your players, caring about the culture within your building. And obviously even they had some issues with that that we don't have to get into, but definitely not perfect. I think that and not that this has even worked. So sports is such a hard business, because even my idea would be something, and the NBA does it, like they put Jerry West in charge, and wherever he goes, he does well. But then in the NFL, you put like John Elway in charge, and he got it done. He got a Super Bowl out of it, but then that team's been terrible for 5 years. So I think that like, it's just so hard to find an example that's consistently a good idea besides hire Bill Belichick. Like, that's the only proven method to winning 20 years straight.
Yeah. Yes.